The newest products in the video game craze don't have any spaceships or Pac-Men. They're called adult video games and have men and women and sex, sometimes violent sex. This one, called Custer's Revenge, features a nude General Custer fighting his way past Indian arrows. You score the big points in this game by getting the general to rape an Indian woman tied to a stake.
Well, if you look at what they represent, raping, racism, violence, pornography, militarism, all the worst kinds of things in society which we would like to eliminate. So I think that they're very detrimental.
Some of these games have already arrived in Canada. They're expected to go on sale in Montreal next week alongside video movies. One of the distributors says there's been a lot of interest. You've seen one of them called Custer's Revenge?
Yes, I have.
What is it like?
It's, the graphics aren't bad in the game. I wouldn't find it offensive.
We urge people to go to the video stores, find out if they're selling those games, and urge them to stop.
Groups opposed to the games are also organizing a letter-writing campaign to the federal cabinet and plan to picket some of the stores selling Custer's Revenge and other adult games. Jim Sundstrom, CBC News, Montreal.
Battles alien ships to abduct inhabitants of friendly planet. Yellow creature gobbles dots while being pursued through maze by monsters. Believe it or not, those things are really happening on 200 electronic video games here at Chicago Fest. What you see here is part of a national phenomenon that we call high-tech rec, a phenomenon that had to happen when the TV set married the computer. It starts with a quarter, and it ends up as a national industry estimated at $7.5 billion a year. Video games. They seem to have captured America's imagination and its pocket change as well. Right now, the country's two hottest games are Chicago games. There's Defender, a space battle game made by Williams Electronics on the north side. The object is to fly over your planet, shooting down the enemy spacecraft, which are trying to capture your humanoids. Defender is prized for its nifty sound and visual effects. In suburban Franklin Park, you'll find Midway Manufacturing feverishly turning out 350 Pac-Man games every day in 3 different cabinet styles. Pac-Man is known as the cute game. A voracious little yellow globe gobbles up golden dots and various kinds of fruit, all the while being pursued by 4 hungry monsters, which can themselves be eaten at crucial moments. Both Defender and Pac-Man are wildly successful, and their corporate marketing executives think they know why.
The video games are becoming more and more popular, and it's because today's generation grew up on television.
They're diving at you, they're bombing you, and here you are, one guy fighting off the whole universe of aliens, and you do get a certain amount of thrill and excitement and a feeling of, boy, when you conquer this game, you really come away satisfied.
We're only limited on video games by the video game designers and engineers' imaginations. Anything they can come up with, we can put on that TV set.
The big explosion in coin-operated video games began in 1979 with Space Invaders. It, like Pac-Man, was designed in Japan, where both games became national crazes. Williams Electronics projects $200 million in revenues this year. Midway expects to do at least that well. Both companies are riding the crest of the video wave that this year will see Americans drop 300 billion quarters into the machines. Tomorrow night on part 2 of High Tech Rec, we will meet a teenage video game wizard. We'll also talk to some psychologists about the possible side effects of playing these games, and we'll meet the Chicago alderman who wants to ban video games for everybody under the age of 18. From Navy Pier, Barry Burnson, News Center 5.
Move over Space Invaders, we found some new games. If you are a fan, we don't have to tell you that video games are taking this country by storm, keeping thousands of kids as well as adults glued to their flashing screens. But there are some people who are worried that the games could be having a negative effect on the players. Barry Burnson joins us now for part 2 of High Tech Rec. And you talk about some of those negative effects and the people who are upset about it.
That's true. In fact, some of the things that doctors are starting to see are Space Invaders elbow, Defender wrist, and Pac-Man pinky. These are really coming into medical offices as the video game wave continues to build. We call them the side effects of high-tech rec. In coin-operated games, there once was a king by the name of pinball, but now 60 to 75% of the industry is video games. Yesterday's pinball wizards are today's captains of video. Mother's Pinball at the corner of Routes 14 and 83 in northwest suburban Mount Prospect. A lot of kids drop a lot of quarters in here, but despite the name of the place, Mother's Pinball, the current score is pinball machines 6, video games 45. George Macy is an average teenager who spends a lot of time here at Mother's, but not much money. He is so skillful at playing the game Defender that he can make a single quarter last for an hour or more by earning additional plays or attack waves. One day last month, at age 14, George racked up 1,774,125 points. No one else has ever come close, at least in the known universe.
Well, when you're playing the game, you always get the green men down at the bottom so that they don't pick up your men and turn into mutants, because when that happens, you can give up the game, because when you lose your world, there's no way of getting out of it.
The planet can blow up.
Yeah, the planet can blow up and you go into space. These videos a lot more, probably the funnest thing is designing one. That's what I like to do the most.
There are those who say the impact of video games isn't all good. Dr. Sherry Turkle, a sociologist at MIT, says these games emphasize power, aggression, macho, and manipulation. We talked about that with two Chicago psychologists.
One of the things that makes people upset is that kids hang around and are obviously having a good time, and I think that people always get nervous when that's happening. So I think that some of the dangers are overstated. But if there's any danger in these games, it seems to me it's that breaking up of the social contacts, that's such a loner sort of activity.
Well, besides the feeling of competence, I think there's also an added benefit of exposure to the video screen and getting prepared for the advent of the computer age.
Chicago Alderman Patrick Hewells believes that where there are video games, there could be trouble. In the residential areas of his Bridgeport ward, Hewells says some small unlicensed arcades have become storefront hangouts, breeding gangs and drug traffic. Hewells wants to ban the games in Chicago for people under age 18.
They're too close to the school. They're too close to the church. Or they're in the middle residential zone, and the kids congregating. People, they're blocking the sidewalk and just hanging around. We have fine parks throughout our city. We have the Valentine's Boys Club. There's other forms of recreation that the kids can get involved in.
The Hewells game ban ordinance will probably come up before the City Council next month. And next year, the U.S. Supreme Court will decide whether such age restrictions are constitutional, a decision that's vitally important to the entire coin-operated industry and pack maniacs and everybody else.
Part 3 tomorrow.
You got it.
All right.
It plays a long time for a quarter. In Heron, Illinois, a teenager has given up on his attempt to break the national point record for the Asteroid video game. Is that right, Barry Burnson?
I think that's right.
Okay. John Jones made more than 20 million points after playing for 41 hours on a quarter. The record is nearly 26 million points, and if you want to know anything about video games, this is the man that can tell you about it, Barry Burnson. Tonight you're going to give us part 3 on his report, High Tech Rec. What is High Tech Rec?
Well, it's recreation that is high technology, you know.
Makes sense.
Video game makers believe that their products are starting to attract a whole new market. Adults, especially women, who would not have been caught dead playing pinball. The competition in this industry is so fierce the game makers won't even tell me the names of their new games, which are due out in October. But we did manage to get a glimpse into the future. What Sam Dicker does for a living is to invent video games. He's one of the resident computer geniuses at Chicago's Williams Electronics Company. Last year, Dicker co-designed Defender, which right now is the #1 coin game in the country. Sam uses this computer for a process he calls birthing, developing new effects for games yet to be invented. The road from here to finished video game may end up costing a company $1 million. But nationwide, Defender is currently earning nearly $8 million a week. What makes a good video game designer?
Well, you have to be a science fiction fan, you have to be a programmer, you have to be kind of an artist. We actually have to first please ourselves, and we're about the most finicky players around. We've played every game until we're bored of it. Just like a movie, you want to get lost in it. You want to forget that you're playing a game. You want to, you know, when the game's over, you want to suddenly realize that you're in the arcade.
At Mother's Pinball in Mount Prospect, companies send their prototype games to be tried out in the field. Here, players can play games not yet available anywhere else.
We watch the players, we check They check to see how long they play the game. They'll tell us it's too fast, it's too slow, it's too easy to play, it's too hard to play.
Then there are the pirates, companies which illegally copy a successful game, undercut prices, and get out of the market before the legitimate manufacturer can take the case to court. This is the original Pac-Man. This is a rip-off version. In this business, timing is everything for both player and marketing exec.
The life of a video game is basically 6 months to a year, depending upon the popularity of the game.
And as players roll up higher and higher scores, the video game companies will try to roll up higher and higher profits.
A new game being placed on location will always draw the player's first quarter. The secret in this industry is to get his second quarter and his third quarter and his fourth quarter and his fifth quarter.
Well, the obvious question is, of course, how long will this smashing success last for video games? Well, there are plenty of new competitors in the field, each one taking more or less of the players' 300 billion quarters a year in this country. Home video game owners will soon be able to buy their own versions of Asteroids, Galaxians, and Pac-Man. So for the video warrior, it appears the sky is the limit, and we should note finally the U.S. military is about to start using modified video games to train aircraft pilots and tank drivers. High-tech wreck.
Jerry, video games are the latest craze to sweep the country and most of the world, too. Millions of people are addicted to hours of gazing at electronic images on game screens in arcades and in their own homes. What makes video games so popular? Well, we search for an answer as we begin a special series on Video Fever, games people play.
It is a cacophony of sounds from a symphony of electronics. If you're filling your time capsules these days, don't forget a bit of Frogger, or Mousetrap, or Grand Champion, or Pac-Man, or Ms. Pac-Man. They are video games. They are as American, well, as international as war. We've got that too. In 1981, Americans popped in between $5 and $9 billion worth of quarters and tokens into the slots of arcade video games. Pac-Man alone digested $200 million for its manufacturer, Bally Corporation's Midway. No human could begin to compute how many Pac-Man dots were gobbled up, how many little children and adults spent their free time at the joystick of a video game control. One study estimates that we spent 75,000 man-years doing this. Don't despair those numbers. Before video games, there were other attractions. Here's a sound to remember, the quiet ride of the silver ball, the ding of the bells as it hit the bumpers.
There's a lot of us who remember pinball machines like these and pool tables like these, people my age and a little bit older. I spent a lot of time during the summer playing a pinball machine like this. And I remember the one thing about pinball machines is the score. You could always get it up to about 99,999 before it rotated back to zero. Now with electronic games, you can go to 1 million or 2 million or 9,999,999. And getting there is half the fun and part of the frustration. Part of the fascination is the way the games are designed. Take 13-year-old Paul Glatzer playing Zaxxon. The game is three-dimensional. The screen is full of tricks to avoid. Your airplane moves faster than the speed of sound. Your tongue hungers for a kill.
I like the details on it. There's good details on the games.
Part of it is the sound. These games would not be any fun at all if there were no sound. But there is, and that is why people like Bert Price can stand at a machine for 2.5 hours, on 1 quarter, mind you, and play Galaga.
I could have done that for longer. Just I lost all my ships.
While we attack...
The United Way kicked off an...
Well, video games fever has prompted a number of businesses to try to cash in on that billion-dollar craze. Book publishers and even movie producers are trying to make video games pay off for them. We go inside a video games factory and learn just how others are making their share of the big money as we continue our special service Video Fever, games people play.
Created new industries like these video game books, How to Win Video Games, The Secret of Video Game Superstars. The video game industry has now even given birth to its own motion picture, Tron, where a young computer genius is trying to break into a massive computer system.
Because, man, somewhere in one of these memories is the evidence.
So the young computer genius tries and gets zapped by a ray gun right into the machine and onto the computer-generated game grid to meet characters who are alter egos of their creators and to a place where, according to the movie ads, love and escape do not compute. Naturally, there is a Tron machine on the market now, 4 games in 1, ray guns and all.
If there's been a mistake, I gotta see the guy in charge.
You will. In terms of the arcade video game, the guy in charge is not in Hollywood. Tron's big brother is in suburban Chicago at the Valley Corporation's Midway plant. Here they are turning out Tron games as fast as they can. These workers are under so much pressure, company executives asked us not to spend too much time shooting the factory for fear it would slow the workers. That gives you some idea how competitive the business is. Incidentally, the Bally Company is the same one who gave us Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Defenders, and Asteroids. On the average, it can take up to 2 years and several $100,000 to get a video game from the drawing board to the arcade. In between, there are secret testing locations and programming changes.
We go by what we call what's in the cash box.
You know, like I was mentioning, the cash box is a cruel mistress.
And that's what we go by.
Jack Middle is president of Taito America. This is a company that first had Space Invaders until it sold the license to Bally. Sometimes this can get a little confusing. Taito let us videotape in a room called Deep Engineering. Without being overdramatic about the whole thing, this is the most secure room in the plant. This is where the game gets its life and personality from computer programmers. Because of the fierce competition among video game companies, Taito requested we do not use last names. But Rex is working with Mark on a new game called Toasters and Chainsaws. Mark is computing what will appear on the screen. Rex is using a computer to synthesize the sound you will hear when the game hits the arcades. It is hours and hours of hard work, often tedious for the company, not very rewarding until the
Most popular pastimes in the country right now, but will this popularity last is the question. Well, the makers of video games are gambling that it will, as we see in this part of our special series on Video Fever, the games people play.
Electronics is changing so rapidly. And with each change in electronics, it brings something new. So this is not a passing fad.
What is a fad is the kind of games that people like to play. Sometimes cute games are in, sometimes war games are in. War games are very big right now. There is so much at stake, there is so much money to be made, that the manufacturers can ill afford to ignore trends in the marketplace. But the trends often change faster than the electronic light of the ray gun, and that makes the risk all that much greater. It makes part of this business dumb luck. Take Space Invaders. It was invented in Japan by Taito, sold in America by Bally. There are about 72,000 Space Invaders from California to New York. Here's another exception, Pac-Man. Where Pac-Man should have lasted 3 or 4 months, it has lasted a year and 7 months. There are 96,000 of these machines on the market.
Before a video game is really a video game, it is nothing but a wooden box with a TV screen and a lot of wires in it. This video game would never be a video game if it weren't for these printed circuit boards. This is what gives the video game life and personality.
That's what makes it so easy for a company like Taito to call back a game like Grand Champion, reprogram it, maybe even rename it, and put it back on the market to make more money. That's a wise move in a business where the competition for our entertainment dollar is brutal.
And it's a very tough dollar. And it's getting tougher. It's not easy. And we all want that same buck.
So Taito President Jack Middle will roll the dice soon on a game called Toasters and Chainsaws. 50,000 machines would be a good run if it meets the public fancy. I'm Josh Lippman.
To your health. Those stories are next.
The Israeli will see health warning labels anytime soon on video games, but it is true that too much of a good thing can be hazardous to your health. We'll find out now about Pac-Man's wrist and more as we continue our special series, Video Fever, Games People Play.
When you're trying to save the galaxy from certain extinction, you're bound to get a little carried away at the machine. The joysticks and buttons on today's video machines take about as much abuse as Rodney Dangerfield. These machines get no respect. And according to a recent study, neither does your body. For instance, Paul Glatzer, after an hour or so on Zexon.
When you play a long time, they start to hurt a lot.
What hurts?
Well, it depends what game you're playing. This
thing
game,
over here, yeah.
It's probably your fingers. Because you flick your fingers a lot and hit the buttons.
15-year-old David Nichols likes to play Pac-Man. In fact, he has gotten his score to more than 266,000 points on a single quarter. And he has found his hand hurting.
It's got a little thing on here that cuts your hand.
Your hand gets cut?
Yeah, they sanded it down there. I guess I got a new knob.
David Nichols and Paul Glatzer are not alone. We have football knee, tennis elbow, jogger's ankle, so why not? Pac-Man's wrist. Dr. Gary Myerson and 2 colleagues did what most curious doctors do, a study. They talked with 134 video game players. As you can see, 65% of those surveyed suffered some injury, blisters, calluses, arthralgia or pain, or tendinitis, from their fingers to their shoulders.
The development of the calluses and blisters are obvious. The complaints and the swellings secondary to the injury to the tendons were while they were standing at the tables playing the games.
Myerson says some of the games could be designed better so that one's wrists would bend naturally to the controls. Myerson also suggests that serious game players consider an arcade glove. At both Bally Midway Company and Taito America, company representatives say they are not callous to these little problems, nor are they apparently very worried about them.
Children? Well, a growing number of parents happen to think so. In some areas have even passed laws restricting the use of the games. We examine this controversy as we conclude our special series, Video Fever, Games People Play.
When you walk into an arcade, any arcade, come with an open mind. An open mind is easy to expand. It might even be a good idea to heed the advice that one game player carries on his shirt. Maybe it's a warning. Video games, in a sense, are addictive. Not like drugs, more like the need to jog. There is probably no true physical dependence. On the other hand,
there certainly is a psychological dependence in the sense that this is a gratifying experience, that the person's peer relationships, source of self-esteem, enjoyment in life, are wrapped up in video games, just as they might be in bowling, running with your cronies with whom you run every Sunday or something of this sort. I have not met anybody who can't go through the day in withdrawal from video games.
Question: is it fair to blame juvenile delinquency on the video game craze?
I think the basic global statement that one could make is that healthy children tend to do things in healthy ways.
Communities around the country are passing laws banning the video games from their towns. Brush fires, to say the least, but they are getting a lot of attention. In Massachusetts, California, New York, in New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and in Georgia. In each of these states, a town or towns has either restricted licensing or banned the games altogether. Why? Fear, rumors, tall tales of corruption and evil. Psychiatrist Robert Alpern says if parents worry, they should make a trip to the local arcade and visit.
Many children has been an absolute boon. Kids who have not been good at much of anything else. Some of them have turned out to be exceptionally good at some of these video games. Talk about their high scores and their achievements as the most esteem-building activity in their entire life.
Well, they come as if from outer space in a variety of weird guises. Defender, Pac-Man, asteroids. To fans, they represent a challenge. But to critics, as Terry Drinkwater reports, they are a menace.
Come on in. It's almost another world here in the video arcades of America. 1 billion games are played every month, a quarter each for Escape, which can last a long time if you're skilled. Pitch yourself against the computer. Millions, mostly teenagers, have. So many, in fact, that psychologists are beginning to worry that some youths are becoming spaced out on the space games.
You can't get hooked on it.
Are you?
Yeah. It keeps on making you play the game. Once you start to play it for a while, you keep on playing it.
Any normal person would want to beat the machine.
And you come back?
Oh, sure.
Again?
Oh, sure.
Again?
Yeah.
Many cities have reacted by making the arcades off limits to all under 17 from 8 to 3. This is the after-school rush in Oakland. Long hours at the screens, psychologists say, can lead to extreme introversion. Youngsters communicating in a video fantasy land and not with their peers or parents.
It's not addictive in the sense of a drug dependency where you're going to have withdrawal symptoms, but it is you can become physically dependent upon it because you get an arousal and then a relaxation response. It's the same as a roller coaster or gambling or playing cards intensely.
Many teenagers are frank in admitting their dependency.
Well, it's the moving lights partly. Some of these games are really hard to do. It just takes a lot of skill, hand-eye coordination, and it doesn't cost as much as some other things, and it's legal.
Yeah, it's addictive. It is. Because you sit there and you just want to play it more and more.
We don't really prefer to use the word addictive. We think it's associated with negative connotations. We prefer to use the term compelling and highly popular, which obviously they are.
And the manufacturers add they teach a bit about computers, too. This is the current craze game, Pac-Man.
I like the little man. He's really neat. He eats up all the other things, you know.
How about that Pac-Man song that I hear around here all the time?
Yeah, you sing it a lot. You hum it.
Indeed, and play it on the jukebox at full volume. Psychologists remind us every younger generation has to have something to scare adults. Right now, all of this is certainly it. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, San Francisco.